Ancient Egypt was a civilization in northeast Africa situated in the Nile Valley. Ancient Egyptian civilization is thought to have formed around 3000 BC. Egypt reached the pinnacle of its power in the New Kingdom, ruling much of Nubia and a sizable portion of the Levant, after which it entered a period of slow decline. During the course of its history, Egypt was invaded or conquered by a number of foreign powers, including the Nubians, the Assyrians, the Persians, and the Macedonians under Alexander the Great. The Greek Ptolemaic kingdom, formed in the aftermath of Alexander's death, ruled Egypt until 30 BC when, under Cleopatra, it fell to Octavian and became a Roman province. The success of ancient Egyptian civilization came partly from its ability to adapt to the conditions of the Nile River Valley for agriculture. The predictable flooding and controlled irrigation of the fertile valley produced surplus crops, which supported a larger population. With resources to spare, the administration sponsored mineral exploitation of the valley and surrounding desert regions, the early development of an independent writing system, the organization of collective construction and agricultural projects, trade with surrounding regions, and a military intended to assert Egyptian dominance. Motivating and organizing these activities was a bureaucracy of elite scribes, religious leaders, and administrators under the control of the pharaoh. Hieroglyphic writing dates from around 3000 BC and is composed of hundreds of symbols. A hieroglyph can represent a word, a sound, or a silent determinative, and the same symbol can serve different purposes in different contexts. Hieroglyphs were a formal script used on stone monuments and in tombs that could be as detailed as individual works of art. In day-to-day writing, scribes used a cursive form of writing called hieratic, which was quicker and easier. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the largest Egyptian pyramid and served as the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu, who ruled during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom. Built in the early 26th century BC, over a period of 27 years, the pyramid is the oldest of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and the only wonder that has remained largely intact. It is the most famous monument of the Giza Pyramid Complex, which is part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. In 332 BC, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt with little resistance from the Persians and was welcomed by the Egyptians as a liberator. The administration established by Alexander's successors, the Macedonian Ptolemaic Kingdom, was based on an Egyptian model and centered in the new capital city of Alexandria. The city showcased the power and prestige of Hellenistic rule and became a center of learning and culture that included the famous Library of Alexandria. The Lighthouse of Alexandria lit the way for the many ships that kept trade flowing through the city as the Ptolemies made commerce and revenue-generating enterprises, such as papyrus manufacturing, their top priority. Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire in 30 BC, following the defeat of Mark Antony and Cleopatra by Octavian in the Battle of Actium. The Romans relied heavily on grain shipments from Egypt, and the Roman army, under the control of a prefect appointed by the emperor, quelled rebellions, strictly enforced the collection of heavy taxes, and prevented attacks by bandits, which had become a notorious problem during the period. Alexandria became an increasingly important center on the trade route with the Orient, as exotic luxuries were in high demand in Rome. Although the Romans had a more hostile attitude than the Greeks towards the Egyptians, some traditions such as mummification and worship of the traditional gods continued. The art of mummy portraiture flourished, and some Roman emperors had themselves depicted as pharaohs, though not to the extent that the Ptolemies had. Local administration became Roman in style, and close to native Egyptians. Cleopatra was queen of the Kingdom of Egypt from 51 to 30 BC and its last ruler. A member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, she was a descendant of its founder Ptolemy I Soter, a Macedonian Greek general of Alexander the Great. After the death of Cleopatra, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire, marking the end of the last Hellenistic state in the Mediterranean. Cleopatra's first language was Koine Greek, and she is the only known Ptolemaic ruler to have learned the Egyptian language. Cleopatra would engage in relationships with both Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. She would have one child, Caesarion, with Julius Caesar and 3 others with Antony. After Octavian's invasion of Egypt and the defeat of Mark Antony's forces, Cleopatra hid herself in her tomb with her close attendants and sent a message to Antony that she had committed suicide. In despair, Antony responded to this by stabbing himself in the stomach. According to Plutarch, he was still dying when brought to Cleopatra at her tomb. When Cleopatra met with Octavian, she told him bluntly, "I will not be led in a triumph," according to Livy, a rare recording of her exact words. Octavian promised that he would keep her alive but offered no explanation about his future plans for her kingdom. When a spy informed her that Octavian planned to move her and her children to Rome in 3 days, she prepared for suicide as she had no intentions of being paraded in a Roman triumph like her sister Arsinoe. It is unclear if Cleopatra's suicide on the 10th of August 30 BC, at age 39, took place within the palace or her tomb. Octavian was said to have been angered by this outcome, but had Cleopatra buried in royal fashion next to Antony in her tomb. Howard Carter was a British archaeologist who discovered the intact tomb of the 18th dynasty pharaoh Tutankhamun in November 1922, the best preserved tomb ever found in the Valley of the Kings. On the 4th of November 1922, a young water boy accidentally stumbled on a stone that turned out to be the top of a flight of steps cut into the bedrock. Carter had the steps partially dug out until the top of a mud-plastered doorway was found. The doorway was stamped with indistinct cartouches, oval seals with hieroglyphic writing. Carter ordered the staircase to be refilled and sent a telegram to Carnarvon, who arrived from England 2.5 weeks later, accompanied by his daughter Lady Evelyn Herbert. On the 24th of November 1922, the full extent of the stairway was cleared and a seal containing Tutankhamun's cartouche found on the outer doorway. This door was removed and the rubble-filled corridor behind cleared, revealing the door of the tomb itself. 2 days later, Carter, along with Carnarvon, made a tiny breach in the top left-hand corner of the doorway, using a chisel. He was able to peer in by the light of a candle and see that many of the gold and ebony treasures were still in place. He did not yet know whether it was a tomb or merely an old cache, but he did see a promising sealed doorway between 2 sentinel statues. Carnarvon asked, "Can you see anything?" Carter replied, "Yes, wonderful things." The many achievements of the ancient Egyptians include the quarrying, surveying, and construction techniques that supported the building of monumental pyramids, temples, and obelisks, a system of mathematics, a practical and effective system of medicine, irrigation systems, and agricultural production techniques, the first known planked boats, Egyptian faience and glass technology, new forms of literature, and the earliest known peace treaty made with the Hittites. Ancient Egypt has left a lasting legacy. Its art and architecture were widely copied, and its antiquities were carried off to far corners of the world. Its monumental ruins have inspired the imaginations of travelers and writers for millennia. A newfound respect for antiquities and excavations in the early modern period has led to the scientific investigation of Egyptian civilization and a greater appreciation of its cultural legacy.